Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining early, and we're going to get started in just a minute. Give folks just maybe 1 or 2 more minutes more to join, and we'll start right in and let whoever else needs to trickle in as we keep going. All right. I think without further ado, we'll probably have some folks keep trickling in as they open their registration links, but we'll go ahead and get started. We do have quite a full agenda for today and want to make sure we get through everything. So welcome everyone to our Babel AI for Cities webinar, Transforming Local Government 2024. We're excited to have you here. My name's Shannon Masika. I'm our Global Smart Cities content lead at Babel, and you'll get to meet a few of my colleagues as well throughout the webinar, as well as our speaker who we're happy to introduce coming up shortly, Jonathan. So moving right ahead, just for a couple of webinar logistics, if you can keep your mics muted until we get to the Q&A section, that would be great. We are recording this webinar, just to let you all know. If for some reason anyone has concerns about that, feel free to let us know in the chat or get in touch with us privately. So before we jump into the full webinar content, just for those of you who are newer to Babel, a little bit about us. We have our foundings at Fraunhofer Research Institute, one of Europe's largest applied research institutes, really focused on how do we take smart city, smart place learnings and bring them from research into action, focused towards positive impact in places, positive impacts in implementations, building smarter, more sustainable urban environments. So we have several activities to that end, one of which we've leaned into from our founding times is our Babel Smart City Knowledge Hub. It's open, it's free, there's a lot of really exciting use cases, what we call case studies from around Europe, around the world in terms of smart, sustainable city implementation. We'll highlight a few of those as related to AI specifically coming up here in just a second with my colleague Peter. But wanted to, for those of you who haven't checked out our platform, just wanted to let you know you can check that out as an additional resource along with what we're going to present for you here today. So now thinking beyond our foundings, our work has really evolved to an even larger portfolio of activities beyond just this Knowledge Hub platform. Our main goal is to facilitate market access, facilitate knowledge transfer towards accelerating smart, sustainable places, helping to empower both public and private sector organizations so that they're be able to successfully implement solutions. Practically, that means that now our activities go, as I said, just beyond this Knowledge Hub. We do a lot of work in training and capacity building, strategic advising, working directly with cities, with other partners and organizations, helping places to access funding for innovative projects, also developing innovative tools and services. So this topic today is really quite relevant because it's already changing the way that even we internally work at Babel, what types of tools and services we're developing and offering, as well as what we're seeing the cities and places that we work with asking for. And we'll be really happy to hear your experiences coming up here in just a second. We'll have a poll where we'll get some feedback from you and delve into that a little bit more. So I think those of you who are in the audience, I'm sure you're well aware, we've got a lot of pressing urban challenges that are facing us in today's world, in today's climate, in terms of both city infrastructure, also in terms of what citizens are expecting from their local governments or higher up levels of government. So what we want to focus on today is, how is artificial intelligence, how is this new field, technology, innovation that's cross-cutting across sectors that we're dealing with when we talk about smart, sustainable places, really helping to address needs and challenges in the work that we do at Babel. And I'm sure much of the work that you all do is need first, technology innovation second. But I think AI is a really exciting field where, we're seeing technology innovation really be applied directly to solve needs and challenges. So with that, I'd like to introduce my colleague Peter to show you some of this in action, how cities are using AI across some of these different sectors. So Peter, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Shannon. So, hi everyone, I'm Peter Griffiths. I'm an urban futurist which essentially means I help cities take the steps towards achieving the futures that they want. And today, I'm going to look at a range of case studies from across Europe on the Babel platform to try and answer this question of what cities are using AI for and how are they using it. So if we move on to the next slide, we'll see that 30 plus case studies across our platform. We're seeing that the impact of AI is actually quite wide-ranging, both in terms of geographical reach, big and small cities, in terms of the range of sectors, touching almost every aspect of the built environment, also how we behave and we experience places. But importantly, it's not just now. Some of these projects actually go back a few years. And so although AI has really gotten a lot of attention right now, some of the groundwork has actually already been happening slowly in the background. So if we take a dive into some of these case studies, we see during the pandemic, Swiss cities used cameras and AI to essentially count the number of people who are using face masks on public transport as a way then of more effectively targeting health campaigns. And so what we're seeing here is, in their case, on the trust side, they intentionally didn't use facial recognition technologies, but very much getting a dynamic count on how people are reacting to public policies. If we move to the next case study, which is, if I remember correctly, it's much closer to you, Jonathan, in North America. So this is in Toronto, and what they were really trying to do here was improve customer experience in buildings. And we've got some very standard tools when it comes to building management. But in this case, through some language learning and conversational AI, able to predict what specific users might want in a building in terms of lighting, in terms of available rooms, and overall just improving the sense of somebody feeling at home in a building. If we move to the next slide, we'll see that this idea is actually being expanded to entire cities. So yeah, in Sandefjord, Norway, a very simple solution actually, introducing a chatbot to the municipal website as a way of making it much easier for citizens to access information that they might otherwise have to dig and try and find on the website. Roughly 2,000 plus answers to common questions built in, but also with some artificial intelligence and some learning. And just a very basic impact is that the municipality found that a considerable decrease in the number of calls coming into the municipality asking simple questions, and freeing up a lot of capacity to deal with more challenging issues that citizens were facing. If we carry on to our next case study, we'll see that one of the areas of AI that I think is particularly interesting is reconfiguring infrastructure and how it actually fits together. And so yeah, in Leipzig, instead of seeing power generation as maybe a single plant, actually, how can that all be tied together in a way that becomes dynamic, where supply and demand can be managed across the entire system, and possibly even users can be incentivized to change their behavior dynamically so that the system as a whole is more resilient. And so from that point of view, one of the applications that we're seeing for AI is really rethinking the scale of infrastructure and how it fits together in dynamic and changing ways over time. And the last case study that second last one. So Cardiff, there are many examples of smart bin applications across cities. There are two aspects of Cardiff that I think are particularly interesting. So the one is using AI to determine the most efficient routes to reduce emissions, but adding a layer of citizen feedback as a way of improving the quality of that data too. So something really interesting about bringing in other forms of data into the model to meet municipal objectives, in this case, reducing emissions and costs and improving the quality of the service. And now to get to the final case study that I want to go through with you. So Dublin as a city was really keen to get insights in terms of how its citizens were experiencing the city. And so using a whole lot of social media analysis and AI, getting a kind of a live footprint of what's happening across the city. And what I find quite interesting about this is a few years ago, I did some research on cities across the world, looking at social media and online news data. And what we saw is that the absolute value of conversations happening had a direct relationship to a city's GDP. And so there's almost certainly patterns of value which AI will extract over time, helping cities improve the quality of their services and of living. And so with that in mind, we're realizing that AI is having such a big impact on cities. We've included it within the modules of our Smarter Places training courses. Small plug, the next one's coming up in May. And one of the reasons for moving quickly on that is at some point we might be replaced by an AI chatbot. So register soon before that happens. We're great to have you on the course. And finally, just my contact details below. Feel free to get in touch. We'd love to hear any of your questions or what it is you're doing in your city. Thank you so much. Back to you, Shannon.
Thanks, Peter. And yes, really open invitation to all of you. Please get in touch. We're happy to hear, feedback from what's going on in your places, where you need help, where you see challenges. Yes, and I see already a note in the chat. If somebody wants to hear more about the modules, we'll be sure to drop that QR code also again later and drop the link. But before we move on to our keynote, just wanted to get a sense of who's in the room today. So if any of you have ever used Slido before, and if you haven't, it's pretty easy. You can either go to slido.com and enter the code that's up here, 3418850, or you can use your phone to scan this QR code. We'll just give a minute or two. We'd like to know where everyone's joining from. Give us your country. I know we have, 44 people in the room today, so I'm guessing it's probably quite a diverse audience. If Dublin wants to be a country now, that's totally fine. We've got some people all around Europe. I know Jonathan and myself, at least, are in the US. I haven't put my info into the poll. Yeah, we have some other folks maybe from USA. And there'll be 2 more questions after the poll, so definitely worthwhile for you to join if you want to also give us some feedback on the next 2 points and see where everybody else is coming from and entering this conversation. Give it just 1 more minute on this poll question, and then we'll move to the next one. All right. For those, maybe you didn't get to respond yet, just for sake of time, I'm going to move ahead, but you're welcome to come back and give us that feedback later. We can also share the poll results after as part of the follow-up materials. So also it'd be interesting for us to know, what type of organization are you working for? Are you working with local or regional government in the private sector? I'm expecting we might have a diverse audience here today, but it'll be great to see how that's split. So we have a lot of people coming from local or regional government. Excellent. And we'll be really happy to hear your experiences also on the next question that we have coming up here in a minute. All right, I'm going to move on to the next one, final one for now. So what is the biggest impact you're already seeing AI have in your city? And that's whether you work directly in local government or not. I'm sure all of you live in some place, whether it's a city or town. So we'd be happy to hear, what you're seeing in your local communities. Very, very interesting data here. And yeah, solving solutions for urban challenges, that's what the heart of what we do at Babel. I'm sure Jonathan also has some interesting comments on that coming up. So without further ado, Jonathan, I'll very short intro, I'll hand the floor over. I think your bio speaks for itself. You've had quite a really varied experience, whether it came to working directly in local government out with Palo Alto, serving as a professor and founding different organizations focused in this field. So I'll let you add a little bit more to your own bio, but the floor is yours. I will stop sharing also so that you can share your screen and present.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Shannon, for that lovely introduction. Thanks, Peter, for your great comments, and thanks, Tamlin, for the invitation. I'm going to go ahead and share now so we can see my presentation. Here we go. Hopefully all the tech cooperates, which it should, and you'll let me know if it doesn't. Okay, here we go. So again, thank you very, very much for this wonderful invitation. It's great to be able to speak with and perhaps answer some questions at the end with such a diverse audience from different countries across Europe and even here in the US. It's such a privilege for me to do that. I want to share with you some brief thoughts today, because we only have a short amount of time, on the role of AI in government and the upcoming role of AI. But I want to take you on a little bit of a journey. I do want to take you through the what is AI and some of the challenges, some of the opportunities, and then talk about it in government context. Everything I shared today is just purely informational and educational, and perhaps a little entertaining, but do not construe any of it as any particular legal, tax, or investment advice or otherwise. Just a bit of disclaimer my lawyers tell me I should do. And I want to let you know that if you enjoy what you see today, please do consider buying one of my books. I have written a lot of books. Here are just a few of them. I've written some kids' books about cities, and actually the one that is most relevant to our conversation today is the very, very popular Smart Cities for Dummies. And of course, it's not for dummies. It's for probably one of the smartest bunches of people in the world, those that run cities and are passionate about our communities. But please do take a look at that. You can see the URL at the top. I wrote this book actually half before COVID and half during COVID. And as I was asked by Babbel to do this event today, I was wondering, did I talk about AI? And I was lucky enough when I flicked through it, looked at the index, I actually wrote a few pages on AI, which surprised me. I was happy about that. Okay, so let's kick off with sort of a definition. It's very important when you're teaching or in front of an audience that we all get on the same page, right? Maybe you have a different understanding of what we're going to talk about today. So let's establish a common definition for all of us. And I take it from Merriam-Webster, the US dictionary, which I enjoy. And it is, the capability of a machine to imitate. Imitate. There's a key word: intelligent human behavior. And the type of AI that we use today, that we're most focused on in all our uses, is something called narrow AI, or artificial narrow intelligence, ANI. But you don't hear many people say that. We just say AI, but really what we're talking about is narrow AI. And what we mean by that is typically the artificial intelligence is very specific. It solves a specific problem really well. It's not generalized across lots of problems, but it does something particularly well. Now, I want to get this out right in front of the whole session today. The key word you should always focus on is the artificial word, right? Artificial intelligence. It's not human intelligence. It is sort of a very fancy magic trick, right? It's a simulation. We can't yet make, computers and computer science be like the human brain, because we don't actually know how the human brain really works. We know a little bit, but if you're going to actually duplicate something, you're going to know how that thing works. So we are a long, long way from that. There is no sentience. There is no thinking machine today. So let's be really clear. Actually, what it is some fancy mathematics. We'll get that to in a second. Let's do a little brain test here. It's early morning in San Francisco where I am, but you are in the afternoon. So let's see how your brains are working. I bet you in just a moment, in less than like 2 seconds, you could figure out what's going to happen here. If you, if the ball actually goes down the slope here, hits the dominoes, you can probably work out very, very fast. Now, I have been trying this little puzzle here, showing this to AI over the last few months, and I have to say it's getting better and better. For example, Google's Gemini project, which just came out recently and it's free for everyone, that actually is pretty good at saying that the ball would hit the dominoes and the dominoes will fall over. But that's about as good as it can get. If I ask if I ask Gemini what's going to happen to the green button, you know what it says? It says, I don't see a green button. Okay. And then I tell her what the green button is, and I say the green button is, where it is, and then it says, I'm not sure what it's going to do. The domino is going to hit the button. We don't know what the button's going to do. Then I ask, for example, what does the train do? There's a little wooden train here, and it says, I can't see the wooden train. So what I'm really trying to say here is, we are very smart. Humans are incredible. You could figure this all out in seconds. Even the best AI software struggles with a image like this, trying to determine what's actually happening, because Computers don't have necessarily reasoning the same way we do, or planning, or any awareness of the world. That is likely all way ahead of us. AI today is largely math. Remember that? We used to do that at school and we were like, why am I doing this? Well, it's at the core of what AI is. It's really good math, and it's math applied to data. That's all it is. But I don't want to understate it. It's really cool math, right? Now, we hear a lot of different words in this space. We hear artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning. I want to be really clear. The big topic, the big broad umbrella term here is artificial intelligence. That's the big one, right? There are lots of subsets. There are lots of different topics within that. And so, for example, machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence. It's a type of AI. And even if we go deeper, we see a type of technology called deep learning. That's the technology we see in generative AI, for example. That's a subset of machine learning. They're not equivalent, right? AI is the umbrella, and then you have subset technologies. In fact, there are a lot of different types of AI in the world today. We've been using it for quite a lot of time, ranging from machine learning through to robotics, something called fuzzy logic. That sounds interesting. Natural language processing. And the most exciting area right now that we're all worked up about is generative AI. So it is a big topic, all under the umbrella of AI. Now, you might have thought AI, didn't it come out in November 2022? Because that's when we all started to hear about it. Okay, I'm being funny. No, AI goes back actually a few decades. And in fact, we all use AI pretty much every single day. I mean, if you use email, you're using AI. If you use a credit card, you're using AI. And if you're lucky enough to have like a virtual assistant, like an Amazon, Alexa, or use iPhone Siri, or something like that, you're using AI. So AI is embedded already deeply in many parts of our world and our life. It's often in the background. We don't actually realize it. Now, what's happening is something has definitely changed, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But AI has been an area of research deeply since about the 1950s, right? That's 74 years ago, right? It's not 18 months ago. And you see some of the things we've been doing over those decades, starting with some of the initial definitions of AI, right through to chatbots, robotics. And then we had that turning point where when AI started to beat humans at chess. That was a real turning point, a kind of a chilling moment when we've got to the point today where a human cannot beat a computer at chess. We thought that would be something that would be too difficult for a computer, but we overcame that 30 years ago, in fact. And we have things like Roomba and Alexa, Watson from IBM. And today we see things like, for example, cars that drive themselves. And then we have generative AI, which is creating incredible innovation. What does the pathway look like? Well, today we are focused on artificial narrow intelligence, ANI, right? It's really specific. But look, we're not going to sit still. Engineers, innovators, scientists, all sorts of people are really focused on developing it, progressing it. And the target here, the exciting target for a lot of people, is this notion of artificial general intelligence. That's where it's largely equivalent to a human in terms of, figuring out problems and being able to apply AI to a lot of different types of problems, not just very specific ones. We get this idea of artificial general intelligence, and lots of people and organizations will claim that they're there or they're getting there. We'll see. It's a very difficult computational problem to solve, but it's likely we'll get there, probably very close in not too distant future. Beyond that, we have this idea of superintelligence, artificial superintelligence, or ASI, and we can basically say this is when the computers are better than us, right? And this is fictional. This does not exist today. There is no science or technology that is ASI, but this is aspirational. This is something we could potentially look forward to, or we could fear in the future. We'll see. What is driving all of this? Why suddenly has AI become the biggest topic in the world? Why is this the most incredible topic of the early 2020s, and why will it likely be a very dominant topic centrally through the next few years? There's a lot of things happening. For example, we are in the era of what we call the zettabyte era. And that's a 1 with 21 zeros. We're creating lots and lots of data in all our interactions. In a hyper-connected digital world, the product of all of that is lots of data. And we're building better and better microchips. If you have some stock in Nvidia, for example, you're probably doing okay these last few months. More and more money is being pumped into this research because we see the outcome, right? From government, we see money being pumped in. We see a lot of big companies like Microsoft, Google, Nvidia, IBM, and others, even Meta, all investing heavily. And that money is producing results, including better software, algorithms, and ultimately, there is a demand for this. I mean, we all are seeing the benefits. And for example, Peter described, and Babel has a lot of examples of how the market is responding, particularly through the lens of the urban market, to create new solutions for cities and government. So let's jump into some, opportunities and risks broadly, and I'll try to make them relevant to government as I go along, and then towards the end, I will give a few examples of actual use in government. I mean, the first thing is I like to think of artificial intelligence, in fact, as augmented intelligence. And what I mean by that is, you think about using, I'm going to guess all of you, and probably most of you have used, ChatGPT or Gemini or something equivalent. And, it's helping you, right? It hasn't replaced you. It's helping you with creating content, creating maybe social media posts or summarizing a large document, right? So we kind of see that AI today for a lot of us is augmenting our work. Here you see this terrific picture. I really like this, of a surgery where, in fact, the robotics are doing most of the work, but humans are there. So the robotics are doing some of the complex, very, very sensitive work, and the humans are there to provide input, to have oversight. So you see this sort of collaboration, this sharing going on between, the computers and the humans. And hopefully, and we expect this to be the case, at least the evidence suggests, the outcomes will be better, right? If you're going to go for a very serious operation, and it's done with a combination of humans and robots and AI, we hope that the solution will be much better ultimately. Now, in terms of some real near-term risks, one of the things we see, and this is going to apply very much in government, is a current skills gap in AI. If we recognize and we acknowledge that, yeah, this is an important technology, and it is going to change our organization for the better, allow us to do things we couldn't do before and solve problems we couldn't. In the private sector, it's going to allow us to, drive innovation and growth and compete in a global market. We're going to have talent. But what we see right now is not enough talent, right? So a real current issue about having enough people acquire knowledge, enough people go to school and be certified in AI topics. And this is not just, a kind of corner case. In many economies, we're looking at potentially millions of people, a shortfall of millions of people skilled to do the work. We also see the risk of leaders not having the skills to understand the possibilities of AI. So we need to make sure that our leaders, and I know that many leaders are on this webinar right now, and hopefully will watch this on YouTube and on the Babel website. They will get more knowledge to be able to be inspired and perhaps go deeper on the topic. And then, there's an issue certainly of the negative side, right, where you could see that AI, in fact, if not embraced, if there isn't skills, and a more competitive AI-driven business is more successful, that your organization could be very much impacted. Now, government, I'm not as concerned, but in the private sector, this could be existential for sure. Now, you'll recall that I said earlier in my brief talk here that AI is fundamentally, at its core, mathematics and data. Well, we've got to recognize that there are some challenges regarding data today. Now, the trick is, when we hear about a new version of a generative AI solution, you may hear the term large language model. That's, again, the core that makes it all work, the LLM, right? You hear about this, and you've got a GPT-3, GPT 3.5, 4. You hear the version numbers of all the generative AI solutions increasing. What's really happening is, sure, the algorithms are getting better, no doubt, more processing power. But what we're really, the big one is lots more data and lots more parameters in the LLM. So you really want a lot of good quality data. And the challenge is perhaps as I say perhaps, but the challenge is going to be as we move forward, whether it's the broad corpus of knowledge or the knowledge locally in your organization that's used to build these LLMs. Well, it can either be poor quality data, in which case we have to we have a risk related to that, or we need to tweak and fine tune our algorithms to be able to deal with poor data quality, and we might see the issue of running out of data. Does not seem crazy, right? How can it be that we've sort of harvested a lot of public data from public websites and things like Wikipedia and something called a common crawl, which is made up of a ton of public web content? How can it be that we're running out? Well, the estimation is that we could run out by as early as late 2025 to 2026 in terms of high quality data. That's a real problem that we have to address. Now, that's not the same as running out of poor quality data. There's a lot of poor quality data out there, and we think we'll have a much longer, a period of time to absorb that. Some analysts say anywhere from 2030 through to 2060. So that's quite a big range. A lot will happen in the meantime. And you've seen and heard about issues with copyright, right? If you have a book that is publicly accessible on the internet, it's possible that that book, or if you have an image or some audio, is being absorbed into these large language models, creating, I think, a lot of work for lawyers and for the legal system in the months and years ahead. Like any data-related, solution, we need to be cognizant of privacy, and I have to always recognize the great work that's been done in Europe. Although messy, the General Data Protection Regulations, GDPR, has gone a long way to raise the awareness and protect privacy. More work can be done, of course. We see the problem of bias, right? Like if you take data that's on a website that's from the data or stuff that was written, let's say in the 1950s, but it actually was on a website in the 1990s or 2000s, it's possible in that content there was a different point of view that is not reflected in the 2020s, right? And so we see that showing up in a negative way in our results. Now, as a government leader, something you're probably already beginning to experience is, wow, there's a lot of AI options, and what should we look at, and what is valuable to us? Well, some of those ideas will come and go. Of course, that's the way that innovation works. Some will stick around, and some will be major players. So you'll have to work with your colleagues and with potentially external help or organizations like Babel to determine what are the real solutions, what vendors are making real progress and are worth implementing. You'll also need to focus on where do we implement AI, right? And I know this, having worked in government for almost a decade. I helped run a city for almost a decade. I know that the most evident characteristic of the job is prioritization. Every single day you're prioritizing constantly, right? Hopefully this resonates with everybody who's watching this today, that the work of working in a government is really about prioritization. So where do we implement? We can't apply AI to everything tomorrow. Perhaps we'd like to, perhaps where there's good solutions, but we have to figure out where it makes sense and prioritize. Looking at a whole range of different tools and assessing vendors, and understanding too that, at the end of the day, a lot of these are businesses, right? And businesses want to get the sale. And so we got to be very smart and informed in order that we can understand what is over-promising, and so that we're not disappointed when we do actually start implementing that AI solution in our city, right? So this is all about getting informed, getting help, getting insights, looking at a lot of different solutions. You're going to have to assign people and time and some dollars or euros to this work in order to make it make sense. Now, I want to just share with you actually one sort of real negative side of things here, something called an AI hallucination. I want to do this by using an example. Now, you may have experienced this, and it's a risk that you should be aware of, certainly in the short term, and it's a hard problem to solve. In that, when you use something like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or others, what happens is on some occasions the result may include an output that is not accurate. In fact, it could be fake. It could be just made up. Now, why this happens, well, that's for another day. That's for another webinar. But inside the mathematics and the computation that's happening, it spits out something that isn't right. We call this an AI hallucination. And so when you do use these tools, some of these basic free tools today, and even the paid for tools like the pro version of ChatGPT, for example, you got to be real careful. You got to make sure that you're confident in the output. And if it's something that's very sensitive and high profile, you probably want to check it, use multiple sources, because there's a chance that it will be, it's a small possibility, it might not be right. And this begs the question, like, if we don't solve this problem, how will we trust the results? And so I'm here to tell you some of the more sobering aspects of AI today, and that this is an area of great focus, and it's a challenge, right? How do we make this? Because you don't want to have to doubt the content, right? You don't want to doubt it. You want to trust it. So here's one. I did the old ego search, as probably some of you have done. And I want to say I did this using a product called Claude.io. It is a conversational bot. It is by a company called Anthropic, and it's very much like ChatGPT. And I asked, that typical question, who is Jonathan Rangantel? I was interested what it would spit out. So the first thing that made me laugh, actually, call me the mayor of the Internet of Things. I think that's hilarious. I actually like it. I'm gonna keep it. I am the mayor of the Internet of Things. I don't know where that comes from. I certainly didn't make that up, and I don't know who made that up. But if we look at the data here, I'm going to move a little bit to off the screen here. It actually gets a lot of stuff right. Yes, I was the CIO for City of Palo Alto. I focused on emerging tech, but it starts to get more interesting as you go down this output here. It says that I teach at the University of San Francisco, which is correct. But it says the McLaren School of Business in their Healthcare Information Technology graduate program. That is absolutely incorrect. I don't believe there is a McLaren School of Business, and I certainly don't teach in the Healthcare Information Technology program. It gets even more interesting. Apparently, I host a podcast called Dr. Reality, which I do not host. I do not host any podcast right now. And finally, I actually like this because it's all positive. Apparently, I serve in the United Nations Center for Regional Development, the China Green Tech Council, and the Commonwealth Center of Connected Health. All incorrect. Okay, this is all wrong. So you might be quite surprised. I did this. This is only about a month ago. Now we could try this again. I wonder if it's got better. But you could see how it's glaringly wrong. And somebody who looks at this, who doesn't know me, maybe they're doing some research on me or anything, could have information here that informs them that's not correct. So that's a real challenge. So now I want to just quickly turn to the core of our time today, which is what are my brief recommendations for local government. So let's just look at the basics, right? Obviously, this topic is quite big, but in a very short presentation, I want to summarize for you. Perhaps that's your style of learning, so this will be appealing to you. Look, it has to all be about training right now. It all has to be about training. In my world, in my company, one of the biggest demands I'm seeing right now is for training of government leaders and government staff. I'm getting requests almost daily now. So the training topic has elevated, and that's appropriate. So, there's a real core to this question of training, and that is we should never expect people to do work they haven't been trained for, right? If you hire people to do a certain job, and let's say they come into the job skill, that's great. But if they're in the job and things change, the tools change, the requirements change, we have an obligation as leaders to train people, right? If we don't, if we expect them just to learn it, well then, the results we get will reflect that. So training has to be a key priority. Now, we also need to have policy support in government, right? Something like generative AI and other AI solutions create risks and some challenges. So in a government context, you want to lower those risks, provide guidance to staff and community. So I hope that all of you are working on your policy support. You need to get that in place, make that a priority. Now, I want to share with you that I've worked with a number of agencies. In particular, I want to share with you that the town of Los Altos Hills in California, has just got their acceptable use policy for generative AI approved. And it is now public and available on the Town of Los Altos Hills website. But I also posted it on my Twitter account and also on my LinkedIn for you. So you can have it, you can tweak it, make it relevant for your agency. So you don't have to start from scratch. In fact, you can upload it and have a generative AI improve it for your purposes. That's kind of meta, right? So you have to have policy support. So I hope you're doing that. Now, step back a little bit. Let's elevate ourselves. Your agency has to have a vision for this. Leadership is so key in everything we do. We never get good results if we don't have passionate, strong leadership. And so your agency has to have a vision for AI. How do you see it helping to address your big challenges, to deliver great services to your community, to run more efficiently? You've got to create this vision, and from that vision, that will drive your strategy. So don't expect AI to bring miracles to your agency if you don't actually have a leader and a plan, right? That's really important here. Now, how is AI being used in government today? It's early, okay? I want to say that. If you're a little bit worried that you're falling behind, I would just say, let's kind of calm down on that. Things are moving quickly, but it is still early. And Babel has some incredible use cases. They are definitely the leaders. But they are outliers too, in that they don't represent the thousands of cities around the world and where each one is. But what we do see is, let's look at this. These are the sort of top 5 areas for AI use right now in government across the world. We see staff support. So that's things like helping to create content, helping to summarize documents, helping to create new documents, and all sorts of even things like images where appropriate. So helping with a range of staff tasks, again, augmenting. A lot of cities are starting to put chatbots on their applications and particularly on their external websites. It's helping with procurement and automation. And fundamentally, what we do like about information systems and where AI is starting to help is in decision support, right? So helping integrating, we're seeing AI begin to be integrated in a whole range of our HR products, our human resources products, our ERP, our financial systems. So these are some of the sort of low-hanging fruit, early areas. Certainly in terms of staff support and chatbots, these are things you can do and should be doing already. Staff support for sure. But remember, you got to have policy and you got to have training to make that happen. Now, I just want to give 2 practical examples before I wrap up here real briefly. And I want to say a little caveat here is the 2 examples I will talk about briefly here. I am an advisor to both of these. So, I just wanted to be real upfront about that. But they are very creative uses of AI. The first one I wanted to share with you, which I encourage you to take a look at, is a new company, a startup called Legislate. And what they do is they help, for example, city clerks create a whole range of content, at least the first draft automatically, just by putting in a very simple prompt. So what the product is doing now for some communities in a pilot fashion is create declarations, proclamations, eventually things like legislation, right? So that's kind of like, the sort of the hard work. When we are creating these things, we have to establish them from nothing. We have to write them up, get creative, and then refine them and go through iterations. Well, Legislate will help you make the first, second, third version very quickly, just with a few prompts. So that's an area, for example. Who knew that AI would come to augment our sort of city clerk services in order that we could have high quality documentation in support of our policy operations in our community. So very creative, very interesting. I'm seeing great interest in this. Another very different type of solution, just to give you a sort of sense of the range of what communities are doing, is a company called Hayden.ai. And any New Yorkers who are on today will maybe recognize this. They also are getting a lot of traction, in fact, in Europe. And they are, a visual recognition AI. And what they do is they put cameras on various vehicles, often on fleets, right, city fleets, and they detect whether there are cars parked in bus lanes and vehicles blocking the sort of throughput of traffic, and then the enforcement is applied however is appropriate for that community. But a lot of interest in this, because if you have, you're trying to create a sort of throughput for buses, delivery, special vehicles, bicycles, and but you block it, and the whole system falls apart. The city is not as efficient. So Hayden is seeing a lot of results by having really good real-time data provided to city officials and enforcement in order that traffic can run smoothly in our communities. And who doesn't want a transportation solution, right? This is a very, very big deal. So two very different solutions here happening in support of our communities. And I wanted to sort of bring my little talk here to a close today by just sort of reinforcing something you probably already think about is AI is a big deal. This is not like a lot of other technologies that made a big difference, but over time were less important, or technologies that were applicable to one area, for example, public safety, or perhaps utilities. What makes AI unique is the ability for it to be applied almost in every single domain in our communities. Every single department is likely going to find a lot of different applications, and increasingly so over the months and years ahead. And in addition, the sophistication of the solution is something notable. So I would encourage those of you here, and if you have influence on your leadership and your communities, to recognize the importance of this. It's here for the long term, and if we get trained, have the right policies, determine the right solutions, and we have a vision driven by passionate leaders, AI has the potential to be transformative in communities in every single part of the world. Now, before I wrap up, a couple little nice little notifications here. The first thing is I have actually a longer, more detailed video series specifically on generative AI, ChatGPT and related. And it can be found here at reichendahl.com/GPT. Now, usually there's actually a cost for this. There's actually a one-time cost. You have to pay to watch it, or you need membership of LinkedIn Learning. But LinkedIn has graciously allowed me to make this available free for an entire month. So it is free now, and it'll be free through April 6th. So I do encourage you to share widely, share as much as you want with no limitations. And there's no small print or anything. It's, again, GPT here, reichendahl.com, GPT. I would love for you all to watch it and to get the benefits of it. My passion in life is education, and I want you to have the benefits of this. Normally, it's a premium, but it's free now. And then finally, if there's anything that you like about perhaps how I teach, or you're interested in things I do teach, and it ranges from everything from cybersecurity, blockchain and crypto, to the fourth industrial revolution, ethics and technology, AI, and much more. I've created a lot of content, a lot over the last few years. Much of it is free, and you can find it at reichendahl.com/learn. I would encourage you to take a look and enjoy it. But also, of course, I want you to explore and use the incredible rich content on Babbel's platform, which you heard about earlier. And you can register for Babbel's platform for free, in fact, and a lot of the content is actually free. So with that, in the short time we had, I want to say thank you very much, and I'll pass you back to Shannon, and perhaps we'll address a few questions.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. I learned quite a few things myself, so that was really informative. Actually really excited to share some of this with colleagues at Babbel as well, because I think the exciting thing about this field is we're all still learning, and there's so much new that we're exploring and seeing how
Yes.
cities are implementing. If you have a question, please raise your hand. Happy if you want to unmute your mics if anyone wants to ask a question directly. I think anything that was mentioned already in the chat has already been addressed, but I could kick it off. Oh, we have one question actually. Poya, if I'm saying your name correctly, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
That'd be great. Thanks a lot, Shannon, and really appreciate Jonathan for your presentation. Korea, I'm heading Research and Innovation and Development Department at the largest global network of cities and co-chair of R&I at Global Covenant of Mayors. Jonathan, I really like what you were sort of unpacking how we can sort of use AI for local governments, particularly in terms of capacity building. I really like that angle. And oftentimes I see that private sector is, sort of continue to develop all these AI and regenerative AI things. But the challenge is it's like most of local governance are not really getting a hold of it. And it's just like constantly evolving. But when it comes to application at the local level by local government, it's not really at the speed and a scale that we need, right? And then you look into IPCC, for example, we see that to reduce GHG emissions by 2050, we certainly need to bank on these type of technologies, and obviously AI can play a huge role, but there's this gap here. So I would love to explore and hear your thoughts and ideas how best different actors could work together to design some modular training for local governments for new and innovative use cases, not only to reduce GHGs, not only to avoid GHGs, but also to change the behavioral change and other service that local governments are providing for their citizens. Thank you.
Well, so nice to hear from you. Thank you for the question, and your points are so well made. I have to fully agree. There is always this lag, obviously, between the private sector and other parts of the economy. Private sector is motivated by profit largely, right? And you either invest or you fail and you go out of business. So they have a different set of incentives. I think we all recognize that. Government, does a city ever go out of business? There's a few examples of that, but typically not, right? So we kind of move forward at our pace. And if you could mute, that would be great. Thanks. If you can find out who it is. Okay. Great. Thank you so much. That was very loud for me, so that I couldn't hear myself think. So, of course, there's a different cadence to how cities innovate. There is an opportunity here, though. I think we all recognize it, that it's a little different. Now, I love that you brought up, sustainability and clean tech and, our major, gas emissions reduction goals. This is like a core human need. If we believe the scientific consensus, we need to act here. And AI has a big role here. So I think it is a matter of, number one is, as you say, we have to create training, and this will be very domain specific training. We will see organizations step up. We will see certain governments step up. I'm always available, of course, to be involved in that. So we need, sustainable/AI/urban AI training for people. We're going to see, we need cities to be, enlightened about the possibilities. We need to inform about the possibilities too. So I think, let me just summarize. I think there's a distinction in the need to be trained and to apply the benefits of AI in a shorter term manner than we have historically with technology and government. I think we need to recognize that. And when leaders do, we'll see some differences.
Thanks, Jonathan, for that answer. We have a question in the chat from Mal about which city is leading in the use of AI. Do you have any strong opinions there? Not to throw your bias in, but to throw your bias in.
I know. Thank you for the question. The question I always get, it's funny. It's interesting to see it applied here. Because I speak so often about smart cities or, digital cities or sustainable communities, smart communities, is what is the smartest community in the world? And it's the answer I give, it's not always satisfying, is you can't really say that, because it's each community will work on projects and have a vision and a strategy that's aligned with their needs, right? So we should look at each city distinctly. Now, there are organizations in the world that have indexes, and often, Helsinki comes out at the top. In Finland, we see Vienna in Austria often at the top of these lists. I think it's so. I think, sure, that's fine. It kind of does this sort of, looks at different areas, some of the transportation, sustainability, digitalization, transportation, things like that. Um, the question of, who's doing great stuff in AI, I don't think I can answer that. Uh, it's too early, to have a city that sort of fully embraced it. It's become the AI city. Perhaps our friends in Neom, when Neom really takes off over in the northwest of Saudi Arabia, they will maintain that they are the most, they call themselves a cognitive city. So I think AI is deeply, built into their architecture. However, that city is still a few years away from being built, so it's not quite fair. No, I would take a look at Babbel's website, look at the use cases, and see what cities are doing interesting things. I would say maybe I would set myself a challenge. Perhaps let's ask this question at the end of the year or early in 2025. I think we'll have a better sense of not who is doing lots and lots of things, but what community in the world has started to use AI in a way in which it's becoming transformational. It's really changing the game on a whole range of deep problems, and how are they approaching it in a unique, novel way? I think those will be the questions I'll be wanting to ask as well, and I'll have a better answer about that a bit later from now.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Definitely really relevant comments. Will, I think you might be the last. You have your hand raised. You might be the last question we squeeze in before we have to wrap up.
Thanks. I'll be really quick. And thanks, Dr. Jonathan. It's really interesting. A lot of us on the call here will work with political representatives, and I'm just interested in your thoughts on the impacts of AI on the democratic process. Are there upsides as well as downsides? Obviously, we all know about fake news, etc. But I'd just be interested in your views on that.
Well, that was a good one. I mean, I think you got to one of the core ones, of course, which is just, fake news, misinformation, what's real, what's not real. I mean, this is a sort of a little issue today, but this is going to become a big issue. And you'll see a president, a prime minister, a mayor, say things that it looks so real, it will cause some knock-on effect that could be very severe in the world or in a community. So we are faced with a major challenge here, and I hope that the more enlightened elected leaders and leaders in general are ready, becoming aware of it. And that's, I think, the first step: creating awareness. Tackling it is obviously a different problem. I'll give you sort of a quick answer because I want to think about this more, but also I'm cognizant of the time. I used to say this about other technology education that I would do. One of the biggest risks with AI is actually doing nothing. If you're a leader, if you're an elected leader, and you're running a city, you have an important role, and you actually don't progress and don't take advantage of it. That's a risk right there, right? That's a real issue. And so I would hope that they are sufficiently empowered and educated to be able to know that there's a role here, and that while you don't have to go crazy tomorrow, but there should be a pathway to some utilization. And maybe if I could just add, because I'd be remiss having just worked on a lot of this over the last few weeks, and we'll be working on it a lot in the next few months, is having the necessary, if it's required, legislation in your community, having your leaders, your elected officials work on that legislation, having city leaders work on regulations, and policy, having the appropriate policy in place. Don't let this technology run its course over the next year or two or three without having in place some guardrails. And elected officials have a very important role to play in that.
Thanks, Jonathan. Appreciate all your perspective and all the comments you've had here today. I think we would love to all keep talking, but unfortunately, we're not going to have time the rest of today. So just wanted to quickly wrap things up. I know you made a really great plug just in general for training and capacity building. And so I will give a short plug again. I know my colleague Peter gave a quick nod to this earlier in the talk. Babel does have one of our upcoming remote training courses coming up in May. It'll be held in English. So if you speak our English language, you can participate from anywhere in the world. We'd be happy to have you if you want to learn more about that. But this really is just the first start. I'm sure you know there's much more detailed training courses, but this will be really one foundational place, especially if you're really looking to explore what's possible in your local community. Also, in terms of creating knowledge into the hands of folks like you, we have some new content that's going to be coming to the Babel platform soon. We already have some use cases we showed today, but we're launching a new neutral solution blueprint soon, just giving a little bit more background information on how cities can and are using AI, as well as a report that will accompany that. So stay tuned in the next few weeks. And thank you all for joining us today. It's been great having you, and thank you so much, Jonathan. Really appreciated your talk. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.